On the outskirts of the small town of Wood Creek, Maine, among maple-covered hills and foggy marshes, stands an abandoned building that the locals simply call St. Mary's. Once there was a psychiatric hospital here. Now there is only a black void that attracts those who are not afraid of the dark. They say that those who enter the hospital after midnight never return. And if he does come back, it's not him anymore. The building was built back in 1896. It was supposed to become a new word in the humane treatment of the mentally ill. However, humanity ended there as soon as the first door was closed. Patients were kept in windowless basements, tied to beds, and treatments included electric shocks, lobotomies, and water chambers, narrow tubs where people were submerged in ice-cold water for hours at a time. The hospital was run by Dr. Nathaniel Crow, a man with an impeccable reputation in medical circles, but with a dark fascination with the occult. He believed that madness is not a disease, but a gap between worlds, and that if you open it, you can see the true nature of man. No one knows exactly when the disappearances began. First, 2 patients disappeared. No one was surprised. But later, an orderly, a nurse, then 3 more doctors. The report said that they escaped or went missing during the storm. However, when the police finally investigated, they discovered a bricked-up basement room where the walls were scratched by human fingernails and a dark liquid that looked like dried blood ran down the floor. In 1937, St. Mary's was officially closed. Dr. Crow allegedly died in a fire when the main building caught fire. The bodies were never found. The city quickly recovered. The hospital was forgotten. The land was sold. But no developer dared to build anything. Everyone who tried it talked about voices in the night, the smell of bleach and burning hair, and a woman in a white coat walking the rooftops. Almost 70 years have passed. In 2004, 4 teenagers, Amy, Trevor, Lindsay, and Jake, decided to make a documentary about an abandoned mental hospital. All they had was a camera, flashlights, and a foolish confidence in their own immortality. The recordings, which the police later found, show them laughing, joking, entering the main building, and how the laughter gradually subsides. At the 15th minute and 9th second of the video, a whisper can be heard, indistinct, like an echo underground. On the 20th, the camera captures the door opening by itself. At 23, Lindsay screams and the lights go out. Then there is only darkness, heavy breathing, and a single shot. The face of Dr. Crow, standing behind them in a medical gown. The camera was found near the entrance. The teenagers themselves, never. Since then, locals say that St. Mary's breathes. At night, the windows glow with a pale light, as if someone is walking inside with a lantern. And sometimes you can hear the ringing of the old hospital bell, although there has been no electricity there for a long time. The security guard hired by the city hall to patrol the area lasted only 3 nights. Then he was found 5 miles from town, walking barefoot along the highway, repeating only one thing: "They are not sick. They are waiting. They are waiting. They called me." He was hospitalized, ironically, in a psychiatric ward in another city. A month later, he committed suicide. In 2018, a group of independent paranormal investigators tried to get official permission from the city government to spend the night at the hospital. They were refused, so they entered there illegally. 3 entered. Only 2 left. The third, a cameraman named Nick Farrell, is missing. His friends said that he turned his head as if he heard someone, and went down the corridor where the door led to the old morgue. When they followed him, there was no one there, only an old gurney and the prints of bare feet that led to the wall. 2 days later, the police found the old film in the morgue. On it are the faces of patients who never existed in the official archives. Their eyes are closed, their mouths are open in a silent scream, and in the last shots, the same face of Dr. Crow slowly approaches the lens. The film was removed. Investigation reports were classified. Today, St. Mary's is surrounded by barbed wire. Signs warn, private property, no admittance. But sometimes you can see someone in a hospital gown standing at the gate at night. He does not move, does not speak, only looks. Locals bypass the road to the hospital on the 10th road, and the police do not even record reports of strange sounds. It is said that the hospital is still alive. She takes away those who come not just to look, but to hear. And there is an old rule among the people of Wood Creek. If you hear the hospital bell ringing, don't look back, because if you look around, St. Mary will see you, and those whom St. Mary sees sooner or later return there themselves, even after years. They say that the last person who tried to get there was a student journalist. His car was found on the side of the road with its headlights still on, and on the passenger seat lay a notebook with a single entry. He talks to me. He says the door isn't closed yet. Some locals joke that the legend is made up to scare tourists. But here's a strange thing. If you connect to the old telephone line of the hospital at night, you can hear a soft rustling. And among him is a voice that whispers, "Patient 731 came home." Somewhere in northern Maine, among dense pine forests and moss-covered hills, stands an old building that the locals simply call Greyfield School. Its age is difficult to determine. Some say it was built in the 1920s, others say even earlier. It used to be an ordinary village school. 1 floor, 3 classrooms, a wooden floor, the smell of chalk and old books. Now there are only cracks, black windows without glass, and the dull creak of the door, which can be heard even in the middle of the night when no living creature is around. Locals bypass the school on the 10th road. Old people who still remember her work shrug their shoulders and say, "You shouldn't go there." It is not empty, but what they mean. No one explains exactly. Young people sometimes dare to come in, especially in autumn, when the fog is low over the ground and the moon hidden behind the clouds makes everything around grey like an old photo. It is said that the last school bell rang in 1972. Then something strange happened there. Part 1. The last lesson. The junior high teacher at Greyfield was Miss Ann Gardner, a young woman in her 30s who had just arrived from Portland. She had clear eyes, a quiet voice, and believed that real people can be raised even in the wilderness. The students loved her, especially little Lizzie Collins, the girl with pitch-black braids. She always sat by the window and drew strange shapes with chalk in the margins of her noted books. Circles, intertwined triangles, something that looked like an eye. One morning in October, Anne arrived at school before everyone else and saw that the chalk was left at the blackboard. Only one word was written on it: silence. She thought it was someone's joke. But when the children entered the classroom, everyone sat too quietly. No one laughed or whispered, and when she asked who wrote this word, everyone was silent. Only Lizzie raised her head and said, "She asked us not to make any noise. Who is she?" Anne was surprised. "The teacher who was with you." The problem is that there was no teacher before Anne. The school was closed for several years. Anne Garden did not see Lizzie Collins again that day. Part 2. Disappearance. According to the police report, the girl left the school during lunch break. Her things, her backpack, books, even her jacket, were left in the classroom, as if she simply dissolved in the air. Search parties combed the woods, but found only a picture of her pinned to an old tree. It showed the same school, but instead of windows, there were black mouths with shadows inside. A week later, the school closed. The students were transferred to a nearby town. And Miss Anne disappeared 3 days after that. Neighbors said that they saw her late at night. She was standing at the school gate, holding a lantern in her hands, and as if calling someone. And then she went inside. The next morning, the door was locked from the inside. When they were knocked out, there was no one in the building. Part 3. 20 years later, 2 decades have passed. In 1993, a group of students from Boston who were interested in the paranormal came to Greyfield to make an amateur film. They found an old map where the school was marked as Greyfield School because of the letter A. It seemed funny to them. Greyfield. Greyfield. But when they arrived at the place, the jokes disappeared. The building stood in the middle of weeds. The roof partially caved in. The door hung on one hinge. Inside, there is dust, broken desks, burnt pages of textbooks. On the blackboard, there is an old faded chalk inscription, "Silence." One of the students, named Jay, jokingly erased the word and wrote, "We're back." Then they heard the boards above them creak, as if someone was walking on the second floor. But the school never had a second floor. At night, when they set the camera to record mode, the lens suddenly moved to the window by itself. The video shows how a child's silhouette appears in the window for a moment, thin, in a white dress. The camera clicks, and the image fades. The next morning, there were no tapes in the car where the equipment was lying. Only one ribbon, torn in half, and a piece of notebook paper with an eye drawn on it. The bodies of the students were never found. Just a car abandoned on the side of the road 3 miles from the school. Part 4. The present day. Almost half a century later, Greyfield School was officially listed as a dangerous site. But sometimes, in calm weather, when the air is still, the locals say that they see dim lights in her windows, as if someone is holding a lesson there again. One school bus driver said that one night he saw a group of children by the side of the road. They were standing in a circle holding hands, and a young woman was shining a lantern in front of them. He stopped, but when he shone his headlights, no one was there. Some claim to have seen Lizzie Collins. Like, the girl has not grown up at all. She stands by the school door, looks straight into the darkness, and waits. If you get closer, you can't see her face, only a black spot instead of eyes. Sometimes, they say, you can hear the school bell. One short blow, as if someone called the children to a lesson, but the one who actually heard it never comes back. Part 5. Record found. In 2018, a man named Richard Mason, a journalist who wrote articles about America's lost places, decided to visit Greyfield. He arrived in the afternoon but did not return until evening. His camera was found 2 weeks later in a swamp nearby. The last recording lasted just over 5 minutes. The video shows Mason and the school behind him. He says, "It's 6:47 p.m. The sun is setting. It's quiet inside, but I think I hear footsteps. There's definitely no one there. It looks like the wind." Then the camera shakes. A dull sound is heard, as if a desk has fallen. Then, children's laughter, very close. The lens turns sharply, and the board is visible. On it is written again, "Silence." Mason moves closer, and then new words appear on the board by themselves. "They are listening." The video cuts out. The last shots show children's palms touching the lens from the inside. Now the road to school is overgrown. The forest seems to deliberately close her from the world. But sometimes new messages appear on tourist forums. "We found her, heard voices, the door was opened." And always under such posts, there is a comment that appears from an unknown account without a photo. "Don't make any noise." She doesn't like loud things. Some say that if you write this sentence on the board, even in a completely different place, it will disappear the next day. And instead, a short word will appear, always the same: silence. And then, at night, you can hear a light breath behind you, as if someone is standing right next to you and looks silently. The cemetery among the pines. In the northern part of Maine, where roads dissolve into mist and pines stand so thick that they hide the sky, there is a place people rarely speak of. It isn't marked on any map. Even satellite images show only a dark spot in the forest, a patch where the trees form a perfect circle and shadows linger even in daylight. Once, it had been a cemetery. Small, ancient, forgotten since the 19th century, when the sawmills burned down and the settlers left. Then came the moss, the fog, and time. People forgot, but the forest did not. The road to silence. When the car left the asphalt and rolled onto the old forest track, everything around sank into green twilight. The light filtered weakly through the branches and the wind seemed too soft, as if it absorbed every sound. The man driving was alone. He wasn't there for thrill or curiosity. He was a photographer, a documenter of forgotten places, someone who sought remnants of human life where it had long since disappeared. He had learned about the cemetery from a newspaper dated 1892, yellowed and fragile, describing a fire that destroyed a chapel and left a few dozen graves behind. The road narrowed until it was barely a path. Branches scraped the sides of the car and mud clung to the tires like glue. It felt as though the forest didn't want him there. When he finally stopped, there was no sound, not even birds. Silence, absolute, heavy and breathless, pressed in from every side. The first grave that he walked on foot, camera ready, documenting everything: fallen trunks, moss-covered stones, a faint outline of an old iron fence. The ground grew soft beneath his boots, springy with rot and damp. The first grave appeared unexpectedly. He almost tripped over it. A crooked stone slab, half swallowed by earth, its inscription worn away. Moss crawled through the cracks, and beneath it something living seemed to move. Around him stood dozens more, all unmarked, nameless. He set up his camera for a panoramic shot, but the focus kept slipping. Not to the graves, but to the space behind him. To nothing. The chapel. Amid the trees stood a dark shape, an old wooden structure half collapsed but still upright. The chapel. The roof sagged, The windows shattered, yet the altar inside remained, covered with dust and ash. He stepped inside. The air was thick and stale. In the corner lay a rotted wooden cross and melted candle stubs, blackened by fire. Beneath the ashes was a small iron bell, rusted, cracked, yet intact. When he touched it, a faint wind rose in the forest. The bell didn't ring, but the air changed. The trees seemed to draw closer. The daylight dimmed. Under his feet, something cracked. The floorboards sagged, revealing an opening below. A dark tunnel. What lies beneath? He climbed down carefully, flashlight trembling in his hand. The stench was unbearable. Rot, ash and iron. Beneath the chapel stretched a stone corridor, narrow and slick with moisture. Drops fell from the ceiling and echoed like footsteps. Rusty hooks lined the walls, perhaps once holding lamps or ropes. The floor was thick with dust, yet footprints led through it. Fresh ones. The corridor ended in a chamber. In the center stood a stone sarcophagus, etched with markings too eroded to read. Above it hung a cross-like symbol, twisted and wrong, like something reversed. He raised the light closer. Dust swirled upward, and for an instant, a face seemed to appear in the air. Blank, featureless, pale as smoke. The beam flickered. When it steadied again, nothing remained. He took a photo. On the camera screen was only darkness. But when he zoomed in, a faint silhouette appeared. A human figure standing beside the sarcophagus, back to the surface. When he emerged, daylight was fading. The sky was the color of ash and the pines looked taller, denser. The silence had returned, but it was no longer empty. It was expectant. He turned to leave, yet no path remained. The trail was gone. Every direction looked the same. Endless trees, endless shadow. Even the compass on his phone spun aimlessly. The ground softened further. The air smelled not just of dampness, but of decay. Roots pulsed beneath the soil, shifting as if something beneath the earth was breathing. He kept walking, hoping to find the road, but found the chapel instead. Only now it looked new. The windows whole, the roof unbroken. Fresh earth lay before the door, recently disturbed, as if someone had dug a grave. The night darkness fell suddenly, like a dropped curtain. His flashlight flickered weakly. The battery was dying. He sat against the wall of the chapel, waiting for dawn. The forest moved with soft, rhythmic sounds. Not animals, not the wind. Something shapeless glided between the trees. Each time he closed his eyes, it was closer. The shadow grew denser, heavier. When the light finally went out, the darkness itself seemed alive. It breathed beside him. It touched his skin, and beneath the ground, something stirred. Slow, deliberate, patient. The morning that never came. The sun did not rise. The sky was a dull grey sheet, unmoving. He stood up, disoriented. The forest looked different, younger, thinner. The chapel was gone. In its place lay smooth, fresh earth. His camera sat on the ground. Inside, there was only one photograph. A pine forest and a grave in the center. On the gravestone, his name. He stared at it for a long time. Around him, silence returned. Not peaceful, but total. A light breeze brushed the branches. Something small fell. The iron bell. It didn't make a sound when it hit the ground, but the silence deepened, expanding like a wave, swallowing every trace of life. Then everything faded away. Years later, the forest in Maine remains empty. People say no birds sing there, no animals pass through. Hunters sometimes find an old camera. Always the same model. Every image inside is black, except the last one. A fresh grave among the pines. No name. No one knows who leaves it there. No one knows whose grave it is. But every night, when fog rolls down from the hills and the pines begin to sway without wind, a faint sound drifts through the trees, a single echo of a distant bell. And if you stand too close, you can feel it. The soft, slow movement of the ground beneath your feet. As if something buried there is still breathing, still listening. Are you asking about that forest boy? About the one where no one goes anymore? Well, I'll tell you, but you'd better not tell anyone. Some stories should not be mentioned out loud because the forest is listening, always. I was born in Tillamook County, Oregon, the small town of Cleveland. 2 streets, an old bar, a shop and a post office. All around are mountains, rains, and endless forests. Here, the smell of moisture does not disappear even in August, and moss grows on everything, even on the stop signs. It was there, between the hills, that forest was Centerwood. Now it is not on any map, but once every child knew, don't go there. My grandfather said that the forest there is not simple, that he is alive and does not like to be approached. We children laughed. How is it that the trees feel something, but hunters bypass that place, even foresters? And they did not go there. And always from time to time, someone disappeared. The first one I remember was a veteran, Ray Holt, an old guy who fought in Vietnam. He went hunting and never came back. His pickup truck was found near an old bridge. On the seat was an unfolded map with a red circle in the middle, right where Centerwood started. The police combed the forest for a week. The dogs lost track after 100 yards. Then they said that it must be a bear. But those who were there said there was no sound in the forest, not a single bird, not a single cricket. Only silence, so deep that it rings in the ears. A few years passed and everyone forgot. And then my brother Henry disappeared. He returned from the army different, quiet, reclusive. He constantly saw dreams. He said that someone was calling him. The voice is female, gentle, but cold, like water. One morning he said, "I'll go there, Bill. I have to find out who she is," and left. No weapons, no map. Just walked in the direction of Centerwood. We searched for him for 3 days. On the 4th, I went with the sheriff. The air there was thick, like fog in an old refrigerator. The sun barely made its way through the crowns, and time seemed to stand still. Every step we took sounded like a drum beat. And then silence. Absolute. We found only the brother's knife. Black, sticky, as if covered with something alive. And that's all. I still thought it was just an accident. But sometimes, at night, I heard a voice. Saying, "Bill, help me." And I could not understand whether it was my brother calling me or what had taken him. 20 years later, Centerwood was hardly mentioned. New people were arriving. The forest was overgrown. The road was closed. But 3 years ago, 2 students came with cameras, drones, a lot of equipment. They said they wanted to make a documentary about the cursed places of America. I warned them, but they just laughed. "Old man, we are not children." We left in the morning, and they did not return. Not the next day, the police found their SUV. The door is open, the keys in the lock. There are backpacks, phones in the cabin. Only there were no cameras. I went with the search parties. I was drawn then, even though I swore never to go there again. A mile from the road, the air became different, as if deeper. The dogs ran away. The walkie-talkies crackled. I heard a noise, Not wind, not footsteps, something else, as if the forest was breathing. And then I saw that the camera was lying on the ground, still turned on. A video flashed on the screen. Someone was walking through the forest, and then a voice was heard. The same voice, quiet, feminine, and he said my name. Bill. I dropped the camera and ran back, only to see the policeman standing there as if he had been buried. A girl, one of the students, was lying on the ground. She was breathing, her eyes open, but empty. She whispered, "There is no death there, only the forest." She was taken to the hospital, but after a few days she simply disappeared. She left the ward in the middle of the night without waking anyone, and no one saw her again. That evening I was sitting on the porch, listening to the rain, and suddenly I smelled something like centerwood, dampness, moss, old roots, and I heard steps. I went out on the road and there was a woman standing there, in the fog, pale as the light of the moon. She just looked at me without moving, and although I didn't see her face, I knew it was her, the one who called my brother. She raised her hand, and everything around fell silent, and I heard a whisper, "Soon." After that, I do not sleep well. Sometimes it seems that I never got out of that forest then, that all this is just his reflection, a shadow, and he just let me live a little longer. Because every night, when the wind brings the smell of rain, I hear her voice. Now he doesn't call, he whispers, "You will be back." I know I will go there again someday. Not because I want to, and because Centerwood doesn't let anyone go. He just waits. On the western outskirts of the small American town of Black Creek, among tall pines and maples, stood an old house. Its windows have long been broken, the roof is leaking, and the paint on the walls has come off like the skin of a dead animal. The locals avoided that place. Even the children who usually rummage through the abandoned buildings never went inside, only watched from afar while the fog passed past the walls, as if something was alive. The old residents said that Maven Hollow, a woman everyone called a witch, once lived there. She was the last of the family that owned that house and disappeared many years ago. Someone said that she was burned, others that she disappeared in the forest during a storm. But everyone who even once came close to her house heard strange sounds, whispers, children's laughter, the creaking of footsteps on the second floor, although there was no one there. Old story. Once upon a time, in the 1950s, Maven was an ordinary woman. She lived quietly, cooked herbs, treated people, but rumors spread in the village that she knew the dark. Some saw how she went to the forest at night with candles and returned in the morning with bloody hands. When the animals began to disappear, and then the two children, people gathered in a crowd and marched to her house. They say that when they opened the door, Maven herself was standing there. Her face was as white as chalk, and her eyes were black, as if empty. She said only one thing: "You shouldn't have come here." Now this house belongs to darkness. Those who were in the crowd swore that after her words, everything changed. The air became thick as smoke, the lights went out, and black mold appeared on the walls. People ran out, leaving the house empty. No one has lived there since. But sometimes, someone disappeared. Teenagers, travelers, even a hunter who decided to spend the night under his roof. New arrivals. Many years later in the 1990s, 3 friends came to Black Creek. Sam, Laura, and Tom are college students filming a video about legends for their term paper. They heard about a house on the outskirts and decided it would be the perfect story. Sam was driving the old pickup truck. Laura was filming, and Tom was constantly cracking jokes, trying to break the tension. As they got closer, the fog had descended so low that the road was almost invisible. The house stood like a giant among the trees, dark, with the eyes of the windows closed. "Are you sure it's here?" whispered Laura. "Yes," said Sam. "It's him. Maven Hollow House." They got out of the car. The air was heavy, frozen. Not a single sound, not a bird song, not a rustle of leaves. Only the distant crackling of branches underfoot. The door was open. When Tom pushed them, they opened with a groan, as if someone had been crying. Inside it smelled of dust and rot. The walls were covered with stains that resembled handprints. There were pieces of furniture, old rusty chains and burnt candles on the floor. Laura turned on the camera. Its light slid along the walls, illuminating children's toys. A broken doll, a headless wooden horse, an old cradle. In every corner there was a feeling as if someone was standing nearby. But it was worth turning around. And there was no one. "It's just an old building," said Tom, trying to laugh. "Wind and branches." But the wind could not make the footprints of bare feet that appeared on the dusty floor in front of them. The stairs creaked underfoot. Each step sounded as if an echo from below repeated it with a delay. Laura walked behind, trembling, holding the camera. When they reached the second floor, Sam stopped. A large antique portrait hung on the wall. A woman with long grey hair and dark eyes was staring right at them. On her neck is a pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. "That must be her," said Sam. "Maven Hollow." But when the light from the camera fell on the canvas, the woman's eyes glowed red, and the paint seemed to move. Laura screamed. The portrait fell, and behind it a secret cabinet opened, the door of which opened by itself. Inside, there was a pitch-black stain that slowly flowed down the wall. And then they heard a whisper, thousands of voices speaking simultaneously. "Don't look! Don't look! She sees you!" Tom came downstairs, shouting that they had to run. But Sam remained, as if something was holding him. He was looking into that black spot, and it seemed to be breathing. Suddenly, a hand grew out of it, thin, with blackened nails, and grabbed him by the throat. The camera fell out of Laura's hands, but she continued to record. The video shows Sam struggling as he is pulled into a wall. His face disappears into the darkness, leaving only fingerprints on the dust. Laura screamed. She ran out of the room, ran downstairs, but the door was no longer visible. Only an endless corridor that twisted in a spiral. The house was changing. Rooms moved, windows became doors, doors became walls. In the kitchen, among the destroyed furniture, Laura saw a woman, an old stooped woman in a black dress. Her eyes glowed like embers. "There is blood on the hands." "I used to live here," she whispered, "and now they all live with me." "Who?" "They?" Laura asked breathlessly. "Those who saw, those who were not supposed to see." The witch reached out her hand, and the walls around her trembled. Figures began to emerge from the shadows, faceless, transparent as smoke. Sam was among them. His eyes were empty. "Laura, go," he said softly. "Don't look at her." But it was too late. Maven's eyes flashed and everything around froze. The next morning, police found the pickup near the edge of the woods. There is only a video camera inside. The recording lasted 47 minutes and ended with a shot of a dark room. On the floor was a woman's pendant in the shape of a crescent moon, which slowly swayed as if someone had just walked by. The house still stands there. Every year someone tries to find the body, but no one goes inside twice. And if you pass by at night, you can hear whispers from the windows. Don't look. She sees. They say Maveen Hollow is not dead. She's just waiting for new eyes to look through them at the world that has long forgotten her.